How's it going, guys? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Ken. Konnichiwa, minasan, o genki desu ka? For those of you who are new, this is the channel where we talk about filmmaking, photography, and iPad Pro related content. And tech. Yes, I just added a new category, so expect some unboxing videos showing off some tech in the future. If any of these piques your interest, do consider subscribing to the channel as you may learn a thing or two from these videos. In today's video, I just want to update you guys about the status of my last PC build. It looks nothing identical to the one that we have just finished on the previous video, right? I'll explain about it later. And I want to show you guys some benchmarks that I've collected using two different types of PC, explain a little bit about the parts that I've chose and why I actually chose the parts to build the PC. Trust me, you're going to want to hear the story about how I changed from that PC into this PC. Sit back, relax and enjoy the video. Let's dive right in. From the last video, after we assembled the PC, right, I got to use the PC for a couple of days until it died on me. Yes, the newly built PC died after a couple of days usage. And I wasn't even able to load into the BIOS. Well, the BIOS is something like the page that you load before entering the Windows OS. So it's like it has access to the motherboard setting. Just before you boot into the Windows, it actually loads up some motherboard settings and actually run the Windows OS from your hard disk and so on. So in short, I just couldn't even have a confirmation that the motherboard was working. Unfortunately, I had to return both the motherboard and the CPU because I got them as a bundled purchase from Lazada. So shortly later, a diagnostic from the seller, too much thermal paste was actually applied onto the motherboard. In my head, I'm like, this is so ridiculous. I did not apply any extra thermal paste onto the motherboard. As you guys know, the AMD stock cooler actually comes with a pre-installed thermal paste. Let's roll back the clip and actually see. We actually did not put any extra thermal paste. We just applied the heatsink directly on top of the CPU, screw the 4 screws, and that's it. Immediately I went ahead to look for a shop that can actually provide me the parts. So as you know, from my last build, we are using the Ryzen 5 3600 with the B550GB motherboard. And the problem with that is the CPU, the Ryzen 5 3600, sold out everywhere. Literally everywhere. Almost about 10 stores that I asked, they don't have stock. Even if they have, it must be a bundled purchase, like an entire PC build, only they will give you that CPU. So for my case, I've already have everything else except the CPU and motherboard. And so I found a shop somewhere near Shah Alam. It's called NetStore. So shout out to NetStore for actually finishing up the assembly of my PC. I actually have a short clip to actually shout you guys out. And eventually I had someone to fix it for me because I don't doubt my skills of putting together the PC. If you get genuine parts with no defect, then you'll have a smooth journey of assembling the PC. Unlike me, I am a little bit unlucky. I received a defect part. So yeah. So the biggest change from my last build to this build was I downgraded my CPU and I changed a motherboard. So right now I'm rocking the Ryzen 5 2600, which is a series lower than the 3600, coupled with an Asrock B450 Steel Legend motherboard. The total sum of these parts are actually cheaper than the previous build, so I had some extra cash lying around and I actually invested in a really good CPU cooler, which is this black thing right here. I'll explain a little bit of why I chose every single part in details a little bit later. So here's a montage of my latest PC build. Enjoy. And welcome back. Now let's dive into why I chose these parts for my PC. Starting with the CPU, I think I've already explained the Ryzen 5 2600 compared to the 3600, 6-core 12 threads, and when we talk about the CPU, it's about the brain of the PC. The more cores and threads you have, the better it is. And so I wouldn't dive too much about the 6-core 12 thread, which series is better. If you have the 3600, I would recommend for sure to get it, but if you are on a slight budget, the 2600 will suffice. And the CPU cooler, which is in a Be Quiet Dark Rock Slim. Yes, it is a fairly huge CPU cooler that actually performs very well. And I'm actually surprised that the PC actually hovers around like 60 degrees. The previous build using the AMD stock cooler actually hovers around 90 degrees, which is pretty bad in my opinion, and I'm really happy that I actually invested the extra money in getting a proper CPU cooler. This cooler I expect to be able to transfer it to my next build. So yeah, consider getting CPU coolers for playing intensive games. The CPU will always be on high load, because for video editing, the only time the CPU goes super hot is when you're actually rendering or exporting, which can be pretty fast, maybe like a 5 to 10 minutes on high load, but when you're playing games it goes like an hour. And so consider this setup a gaming ready setup slash video editing or whatever you call it. Sorry for interrupting, but we have come to the end of part 1 of this video. Thank you all so much for watching. Stay tuned for part 2, where I will continue explaining about the reasons why I picked these parts for my PC build and some benchmark scores. I'm hoping to release it 2 to 3 days later. As always, I will see you guys very soon. Stay safe, peace out, bye bye.